Good morning, friends. Welcome to my ad hoc ranting program. And today I'm going to talk generic about things. So, as I mentioned earlier, that United States is donating junkyard parts, uh, and that while divulging the operation, the disclosing the operation of donating parts to Ukraine, they kept the details secret as if the KGB doesn't know, right? And coincidentally, the Ukrainian, those in government in Ukraine, coordinated as if it's a coordinated process while they disclosed the operation of donating parts from United States to Ukraine or from somewhere, right? Uh, they also concealed the details of what has been donated and what. But from the flow of their statements, and you can discern and detect or surmise or deduce that it wasn't really a big deal. So I'm thinking, maybe tractors like Caterpillar or John Deere tractors, now they're kind of utilizing in airplanes, but these are not even new, right? I don't know how much the stock market charged for these parts, but maybe for every box of parts, right? They charged like $1 trillion for investors in Russia, Iran, Israel, and China, and here and there. Well, you know the story, right? I also heard that Australia is going to donate or like volunteers kangaroos because they're nimble, right? Nimble on the battlefield, and no sniper can pin them down or uh, uh, get them or hit them with a bullet. Uh, shooting a kangaroo on the run is very hard. Now, also I heard like Mexico is going to donate some burritos and burros. Burrito and burros, as you all know, they're donkeys, right? But they are also going to ship like tacos and tamales and so on and so forth. By the time the tacos and tamales get there, they will be stale, right? So I don't know. And everybody, of course, of those guys is going to gloat like about donating and supporting Ukraine and so on, while under table they're supporting Pustarini. India. India is going to donate rickshaws. Rickshaws, some people don't know what rickshaws are. They're just like a technological marvel. It's like a hull or a frame made of wires and pipes and so on. And, there's like a crude rig in the front with a very small engine and three wheelers, right? They're usually used in to like transportation or freight systems, like advanced freight systems of rickshaws, right? Uh, and that's that, and oh no, wait a minute, MBS and Zayed and all these like Israeli guys in the Gulf region, and the Kuwaitis and Salem and Oman and UAE and Qatar and Bahrain. Oh man, these guys are going to send camels. So they're going to send camels. I have nothing against camels. I am an Arab myself, so I can identify with camels. Now, some uh, people in the West, in the media and here and there, they always like poke fun of camels. Israeli people in particular, they always like are trying to stereotype camels, trying to distance themselves from camels, Jewish people, even though their history is associated with camels because they're from the Middle East, right? So I'm not gonna disown camels. You know, in my history in the past, I remember when I lived in Syria, sometimes I saw like those camels walking by and so on. So camels are decent animals, let's put it this way. But now they're going to be used in modern warfare, and the Gulf countries are going to ship some of those to Ukraine. Thereby, the world is supporting Ukraine, right? Oh man, what a farce! What a show of deception and terror, while they're fully supporting Russia and by whatever means necessary. And here, after Russia was defeated in Ukraine, whatever is left, uh, you could see the sense of hopelessness and disappointment, whether it's in the media, among the pawns of the media, right? Those Israeli guys, and whether it's in the uh, politicians or Congress or Senate, or some people are straight out. They're not even concealing that. Some of them are talking in metaphor about their disappointment in the loss, in that their brother Abu Stalinin, lost the war, and this folks has stifled and put to stop a big operation on historic level. What was going to happen in Europe was very big, folks. It was a historical marker for Israelis, like ever since they existed, like 5,000 years ago or so. So they say, right? What was going to happen? Russia was going to come and take over Europe, and Europe will have been completely transformed and morphed into something pretty bad, right? Will be like down to earth, demented, animalistic, and so on. That's what was in store for Europe in general. But of course, Pustalini stumbled, his hoofs, didn't catch, didn't weren't firm on the ground, and he just flipped over and bam, right? That's his reality, folks. What happened in Ukraine is very simple. They keep telling you about failure of intelligence. They keep telling you about bad logistics or failed logistics on behalf of Russia, and they keep giving you all these innuendos. But no, there are two factors that they didn't count on, and that's what surprised them here in the West and in Russia and in China and in Arabia, wherever they are in Europe, is that they did not believe, or they believed that the Ukrainian citizen will not fight, right? That is the main major surprise for them, that they thought the Ukrainian citizen or soldier wasn't gonna fight, They were gonna run, they were gonna give up, and so on and so forth, because their mentality is texting and cell phone and TV and whatever. That's what they thought. And that's the big surprise. That was a very consequential. That was very surprising for them, and still is. They're confounded. They're shocked. They're speechless. They're paralyzed, really, that Ukrainian citizen and Ukrainian soldier will fight such fight, to the degree that one of them actually destroyed a bridge at the cost of his own life. You'd expect this from Muslims, suicide missions and so on, but not from a Ukrainian, but they did it in defense of their country. So that's the major upset, major surprise. The other thing is they didn't count on the Ukrainian military to be so versatile and nimble and dynamic in the field and so on. They knew how to utilize whatever little they have, right? Ukrainian military did not invent this doctrine, this military doctrine. This military doctrine was actually first, it's been around for a long time. We've seen its earliest is in the early Islamic era, It's called Kargun Wafar, and then division of armies and so on. But in the modern age, it really manifested itself and materialized in Afghanistan. the smaller units and the hit and run and or ambushes and so these military doctrines were really in the modern age were re-implemented with a lot of modification, of course, modifications and improvised tactics due to the modern weaponry. It used to be like sword and arrows and horses, and now it's like anti-aircraft missiles and anti-tank ordnance and so on, and mines and snipers and so on. So it's changed, but that's where it began to be redefined. It again it was very successful in Iraq after the fall of Saddam Hussein and in Syria as well. In the West in general, America and its partner Russia in the Middle East against, Islam and so on, against those Sunnis who have nothing to do with terrorism. I swear by Allah, Sunnis have absolutely nothing to do with any terrorist attack that happened in the West. Period. You can take these words to the bank, folks. All the terror act happened by way of Shiites and Alawites as operatives, including the September 11th. These were the terrorists that carried out the attack, but it was much more complex than that. Syrian regimes like Syrian regime, Hezbollah, and Gulf Arab countries, right? They're brothers. And Iran's regime and Russia, actually, Russia facilitated a lot of uh, 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 a lot of preparations in the West here in New York and everywhere else. So Russia's regime is big partner in terrorism. Uh, Now here's a clue for you. So in Iraq and Syria, and it takes bravery, of course, on the part of the individual, right? And they call them ISIS. They're not ISIS, really. ISIS, like I say, is symbolic. ISIS and Qaeda are, and Muslim Brotherhoods and Houthis, and all these are one alliance, folks. In Syria, they were fighting against the people of Syria, of course, whatever they can do. And the reason being is they wanted to motivate the Western pilot, the Western soldier, the Western tanker, and whoever it is to kill as much as they can, right? Because now they come on the premise of hating those who are terrorists, who are killing and maiming innocent civilians. And then what they don't know is that they are there killing the innocent civilian who is a victim just like they are. And the culprit or the perpetrator who's sitting unseen behind the scene carrying out all these attacks are those Shiites and Alawites and KGB and above them Israel, right? And then here in the United States, they have help too. So that's that, folks. So that modern warfare, that's where it was developed, actually. And then in Syria and in the bravery, and still going on, of course. While it seems to be over, it's really not over. And in Chechnya, I can't take, the Chechen, I can't take credit from them, regardless, even if I was their enemy and fighting against them. And I'm not talking about Kadyrov, that dog, and his pawns, those Shiites and Alawites and whoever they are. These are minorities, of course. Uh, and you may say, well, his father was killed by Russians. Well, his father was, but his mother wasn't, if you know what I mean, right? At any rate, that's where that warfare was developed, and the Ukrainian military made very, very good utilization of it, of course. And now the difference is basically the Ukrainian military had more resources, such as javelins, such as Stingers, such as they have their own manufacturing of the Stunga missile, and they have tanks, and they have. So they're an army, really, at the end of the day, with good resources. Had the Syrian Sunnis and Syrian and Iraqis and Chechen and so on have they had access to same weaponry, Russia would be history by now. So that's what it is, folks. Now, here's a very important point. In the past 60 days, the structure and the framework of Israel, of its tripod legs like Iran, Russia, and China, And here and there, of course, they have. And what happened in Ukraine has caused them now to go back to the drawing table. Period. They capitalized and invested so much on this particular design and strategy and so on. But what happened in Ukraine has actually caused them a lot of upset and reconsideration. It did really completely upset, turn up, what is it, topsy-turvy, ended their strategy and plan, and now it's topsy-turvy, right? That's what happened. Russia is no longer what happened to Russia and Ukraine made it very changed completely the perception of Russia in the entire world. It also caused other nations to suffer the same reputation, to suffer the same damage for their reputation, such as China. Now nobody is afraid of Russia anymore, not even the West when they keep talking about military confrontation and so on. It's very obvious. Any country in the West, United States, England, Germany, France, even the Scandinavian countries, if they engage Russia now, they will basically put Russia to sleep very quickly. Russia's military to sleep very quickly. It's not just their politicians and polity and so on, but it's their military in general, their doctrine and their technology and their conduct of war. However, I'm gonna make this very important point now. The Ukrainians citizen demonstrated the willingness and the resolve to fight and defend the country and die for it. It's totally opposite to what the Russian is. Russian being under communism for over 100 years now, right? Is total opposite to that of the Syrian soldier, the Syrian Sunni, or the Sunni in general, right? Or the Chechen, or the Iraqi, or whoever it is, the Afghan and so on. They're total opposite. They are not the type that fights and get killed, right? They may fight if their safety is guaranteed. And that has been driven a lot by, the psychological conditioning and the social values being destroyed by communism. And that's what Russia is now. Russia now has suffered. Its reputation has massively collapsed and suffered. Aside from them collapsing in Ukraine, they're understood to be militarily nothing. Nobody is concerned about them anymore. To constitute, of course, sure, you say they have nuclear weapon, but trust me, seeing that Putin or Pustalinin sitting down in his chair facing Shwego, his brother, right, and Crete, and like slouching in his chair, like with a fetal position and so on and so forth, because he's like a child, who caused the whole house to collapse now. It showed, right there, and then that rat is not going to use nuclear weapons, even if he was strong as demented as ruthless, as weird as Stalin himself. Even Stalin would not use it. Why? Because he knows it's going to come back to haunt him. So that's that. Other than that, Russia's reputation has suffered massively now. Basically, that's what it is. Russia now is no longer an entity in the psychology of other nations and other people, period. Nobody is no longer is afraid of Russia. Not a military, not an individual, not a society. There is a concern, and that also manifested itself in Europe as well, among at least the people and the masses, and that is, you don't want to be governed by those people. Now, there is emphasis on Nazism and so on, but everybody avoid communism. But if you take a European citizen, if you take an Arab citizen, if you take an Asian citizen or American citizen, open their heart and their minds and look, you would see, and this is a fact, this is a fact. You would see that they're it's not like they don't care about Nazism, but in their mind, Nazism was pretty much local to Germany, and it disappeared, right, from their mind. But you will find communism like it's a scar. Communism is a scar in the human psyche, in civilization, and people are still aware of it. Don't ever think that people are not aware of it, or what happened in the last century and what's still happening. And Putin manifested that very same thing, that he is continuing this communism of his forebears, of Stalin, of Lenin, and you know, so that Russia is not successful militarily, is not successful economically, is not successful. It's completely diminished. It's completely destroyed militarily, economically, socially, historically, and is no longer acceptable to in among the people of the world for what it is and what it was not. And that's what Russia is now. Their collapse in Ukraine was far bigger collapse than you can ever imagine. Actually, it's not just Ukraine. You may think that, and they're trying, the media and politicians trying to insinuate that Russia's conduct in Syria and Chechnya and here and there was against Muslims, those terrorists, right? So have nothing to do with terrorism, I swear. It's all your brethren, the Shiites and Alawites and so on, and above them Israel, right? That people don't care. Sure, maybe they were oblivious to what happened or looked the other way or just like glimpsed and then, didn't care. But don't ever think that what happened with the Russians and the regime in Syria and Iran, those brothers, right, and Hezbollah and so on, don't think that it didn't have an impact on the psychology of the Westerner or the Easterner or whoever they are. The killing there, while they probably didn't care, but now that actually went into the background of the mind, right? That those people, the post-Stalinian, who are a continuation of Putin and Stalin and of Lenin, right? And, you name it, Gorbachev, Brezhnev, Khrushchev, whoever, Boris Yeltsin, and so on and so forth, that they are capable of doing things like that. It's in the mind of people. You may think it didn't influence them. Believe me, big part of Ukrainian citizens' mentality and European and wherever it is has been influenced by what happened in Syria. In Germany alone, don't ever think that people don't look at the refugees and see what happened, even though they hate them probably and they want to push them out, but they at the same time see what happened to them and on the hands of Putin. Now, Putin, Stalin and Ayatollahs and so on, they didn't take refugees. They just murdered millions in Syria. They and that Syrian regime, their little puppy, right? The one that Zion gambled all that it is in order to preserve him, right? And his regime, of course, his Alawites. I wouldn't raffle a donkey on him, that motherfucker. If I was a politician, I wouldn't wager $1, even if I was gonna win 1 million on that regime in Syria in order to prop it up in short. I will just ditch it, basic and simple, for what it is. And for me, it's a human value, right? And what that criminal part, that psychotic, that criminal part, criminal behavior of that regime. But if I took myself and considered myself as a strategist of American or Israelis, right, I wouldn't wager much on that. Fuck no, period. But hey, sometimes you're drunk of power. I said this way a long time ago before I heard it, so it's going here. They're drunk of power, and their qualifications, psychological and intelligence qualifications, yes, consider that an insult if you want to, doesn't allow them to handle very sophisticated, very large schemes and events, right? Once they become like very large, they begin to implode and falter. Across history, they have perfect record of that. All they cause at the end of the day is maim and hurt and mass, misery, and that's all they arrived at in the past, and that's what they will ever arrive at so long they exist. So, anyways, so the point here is very simple, folks. Is people, while showing indifference toward the plight of Syrians and the misery of Syrians, and mass killing, gases, bunker busters on civilians, and destruction of cities, and so on, or Iraq for that matter, or Yemen and so on, and they consider it like this other planet, right? Because they're different religion, they're different habits and so on. Not knowing in the West here, at least, that those people have the lion's share of their own thinking and their own life and their own technologies and science and so on and so forth. But that's a different subject, of course. But yet that has influenced them. You know, they saw what Putin is. They look at the interaction. Sometimes if you're sitting on a table, say poker table. I don't play poker, but and watching, not playing, you know you're indifferent because you're not losing, you're not winning. You know, you're just watching, right? But you can't help it. It's within your psyche. Our brains, you know, are like black holes. You know, they emit and they're constantly analyzing and receiving and influencing and getting influenced, and it's like this here is so busy and is so going fast, like processing information and so on. You have no idea what's happening here. But again, that's another subject. In the past, when you know the prophet identified it as, you know, spirits meeting each other, and some do acknowledge, some do not. You know, it's a very complex situation. In modern days, they renamed it and called it by that Swiss. What's his name? Swiss Carl Jung. Oh, you know what the fuck. You know what's his. But he's what he said. And consider that. He said he called it collective unconscious. But it's not a new. But oh, the man is intelligent. The man is freaking darn smart. But nonetheless, people see, even though they're indifferent to what's happening, whether it's poker table, whether it's wars happening in Ukraine or the Middle East and here and there and so on, they know what Russia, they're making a certain perception of Russia. That's why here you go in the United States, all the whites, almost all. Let's not count those off-whites called Lindsey Graham and Trump and Obama and Biden and well, Kavanaugh, whatever they are, you know, those pro-Israeli ones, you know, they're off-white, not exactly like me, you know, I got white skin, but you know, I got something from back there. So I'm not totally white. I'm sugary white, you know, like olive, okay, olive oil, olive. So, anyways, why is that? You think is because they have their unconscious has formulated this thing about Russia and what it is for about a century now. It's not about to disappear, folks. It's that simple. So, lo and behold, today is Sunday. And I can tell you this. Oh, this is not over. Oh, this is not over. Oh, this is not over, folks. Ukrainians, Slava Ukraini. Have a nice day, my friends. Syrian Sunnis or Sunnis anywhere. My love, my people. And those innocent Europeans, Scans, Germanics, French, and you know, Spanish, and Italians, and Bulgarians. If you feel the same about as I do about Pustalinin and Assad and the Ayatollahs and their umbrella, the Israelis and the Trumps and so on, you're my people, and I will be proud to be one of you, part of that animal farm. Point. Don't much buy what's happening in France. When the election was restricted on Macron and Le Pen, that was it, folks. You know, these two are brother and sister. You don't believe me? You better believe me, folks. You better believe me. France is no different than the United States. The only exception that I saw happening in France in the past, is really Jacques Chirac. He was different. He was very different, actually. He was one among their very few conscious people who opposed the war against Iraq, right? while the others like were barking like dogs and crowing like crows and so on, like Blair, like Bush, like others as well. I can name quite a few, in fact. Uh, and they were for for the war in Libya and the war in Syria and so on. Now some of them are trying to wash their hands off, like I didn't do it, But guess what? The chocolate is around your mouth. Have a nice day, my friends, and don't be deceived by what's going on in France. What's going on in France? Israel ruled it for a while now, and that's it, folks. These are performances and farce, like deception and tactics. It's really better not to go vote in France because you're really there is no in the United States and in France and in other places as well. There is no free election anymore. Period. And I guarantee you that in the United States and in France as well. Uh, President is basically appointed. Have a nice day, my friends. Good Sunday for you and happy holiday, Ukrainians.